You may know System of a Down from some of their more popular songs, such as BYOB, Chop Suey, Aerials, Prison Song. They've been releasing music since 1998, gaining more mainstream popularity in 2001 after the release of their second album, Toxicity. They have released 5 albums, which is a self-titled Toxicity, Steal This Album, Mesmerize, and Hypnotize. Across the span of these albums, the majority of their music has always been socio-political. While now I've been thinking about how System of a Down's music have not only aged like beautiful nu metal wine, but also how their words still ring true in this polarized, unpredictable political climate. Especially thinking this after they dropped their last 2 singles. After all, those songs were released in order to bring awareness to what's going on in Armenia right now, but I'm getting ahead of myself. System of a Down's genesis in the socio and political commentary started during a time of political unrest and uncertainty. The 2000s was a terrifying time for a lot of Americans. I mean, you had 9/11, Bush administration, controversy about whether or not America was going to the Iraq and Afghanistan war or not, and all of this swirled around in the social consciousness. The members of System of a Down had a lifetime of being politically active and conscious because of their cultural background. All the band members are of Armenian descent. I would say this Armenian background has definitely shaped how they've seen the world. You can hear it in something as visceral as the music composition. They have a lot of Middle Eastern licks and melodies that I would argue gives System unique sound that we all know them for today. But it's more than just a musical influence. You can't talk about System of a Down without talking about the Armenian genocide. This is an event that has been a source of contention on a global scale. Turkey still denies and doesn't recognize the tragedy. This advocacy has oftentimes characterized the advocacy desires and skills of the members of System. Growing up in this environment where you have to advocate for something as tragic as a genocide of your ethnic ancestors, it's definitely going to shape how you critique the society you grow up in. Introducing Serj Tankian. Serj Tankian is the lead singer of System of a Down. He considers himself an activist first and foremost. Seeing the effects of war, bombing, and violence as a child, Serj Tankian, alongside his other band members, are actively and vocally anti-war. What are some of the messages that System of a Down has been screaming out into the world since 1998? I would say violence's effect on future generations, television's mass spread of propaganda, the war on drugs, police brutality, military recruitment manipulation. The list is endless of what System of a Down felt was important and relevant enough to talk about. Not all of their songs are political. I mean, some of them deal with spirituality, angst, death, the human experience, really. And while I absolutely love these songs, I want to stay focused on their socio-political commentary. Allow me to give you an example of what I'm talking about. Their 2006 award-winning song, BYOB, is a great example of how they used their lyrics and musicality in order to get across the urgency of their message. Remember, this was released back in 2005, which is only 2 years after America sent troops to Iraq. Even I remember in my childhood how people would put yellow ribbons on their trees in order to show support to the soldiers going to Iraq. And it oftentimes meant that they had a family member deployed. This time was rife with pro-military and anti-military sentiments. And System of a Down's take on this issue was loud and clear. They believed that the American government was recruiting its young men to go out and be killed by using empty promises. You'll be a hero. You'll be serving your country. We'll pay for your college. And by the time they were out there, they realized those promises were empty, and it was probably too late. If you want a good cry on this topic, you can definitely listen to Soldier Side on their album Hypnotize. And while some people may argue that the issue of the Iraq War is still an issue today, it's not exactly as pressing as it was back in the early 2000s. So what more poignant messages does System of a Down still have to offer today? This conversation really started all the way back in the beginning of 2020. You know, when the first meme of the year was whether or not we were going into World War III or not, that sentiment of whether or not we were going to war was in the back of my mind as I started to listen to System of a Down. and it sort of made the experience a little less enjoyable. I found myself relating to the music on a more personal level than ever before. I realized I wasn't just screaming along with Surge about general ideas, vague anger at the system. I was screaming from a place of uncertain anxiety that the memes had been covering up. I was frightened about where the year was going. I was venting out the distrust I had towards my government for keeping us out of senseless violence and war. This idea sort of faded into the back of my mind as the rest of 2020 rolled around, because, well, we all know how 2020 went. Armenian flag colors? I'm working on it, alright? It's just the process. Then, May 25th, 2020, a black American is killed by a racist cop in broad daylight. It's recorded, posted on the internet, and then our society is thrust into the throes of a civil rights movement I have never personally seen within my lifetime. Black Lives Matter, defunding of the police, ACAB, systematic oppression of minorities. As of posting this video, we are still feeling the ramifications of the first few months of protests and riots, and for right reason. And once again, who seems to have a word of critique for me to chew on? The voice of 4 American Armenian men, their voices recorded all the way back in the 2000s. Go listen to the 3rd track on Toxicity, Deer Dance. It was originally written for discontent toward the LA law enforcement and the influx of police brutality, and the words in it sound oddly familiar. Parts just hit different now after the time of BLM. But all of this really came together for me when I discovered System's Wake Up the Souls tour. During this tour, they performed in Armenia during the 100th anniversary of the Armenian genocide. They performed on the soil that their ancestors had been slaughtered. A tragedy that had almost gone unnoticed had it not been for avid voices like System of a Down. And for me, that has to be one of the most powerful signs of victory of all. Singing, living, thriving, 100 years later on the soil that your predecessors fought for their lives on. The purpose of the tour was to spread awareness about the genocide, and at the time that I had discovered it, I sort of saw it as a happy ending. That at the very least, these Armenian band members and large audience of thousands and thousands of Armenian people singing, using art and music to unite and spit in the face of their country's enemies. This all hit so powerfully for me when the guitarist, Darren Malakian, screamed out into the crowd, "To our murderers, this is freedom!" And I found myself feeling happy and inspired. In a time where I was watching fellow Americans of a different race from me being persecuted right before me on social media every day, listening to my black friends, coming forward to talk about how these things weren't just faraway political issues, not something they could just turn off when they logged off Facebook. This was the new tragedy faced before me, my friends, and my country as a whole. See this band using something like music and art to unite and bring a hopeful message to their fellow Armenians. It gave me hope that after a whole century, this amazing band could thrive on the soil that their past people had been attacked on, get through this modern oppression as well. Seemingly their band's mission was over, right? Well, not quite. System broke their creative silence just last year with the beautiful love letter to Armenian soldiers and people, "Protect the land." Watch this music video, I beg of you. The typical spastic, unpredictable system sound we've all come to know and love in genocidal humanoids. Nowadays, System fans have been hearing for years about the creative and political disagreements between the band members since the hiatus in 2006. Heck, even before then. Tonkian and co-songwriter Malakian have been vocal about their creative odds since the producing of their last 2 albums, Mesmerized and Hypnotized. After all these years, they still haven't been able to amend their creative disparities. The drummer, John Dolman, is openly a Trump supporter and unapologetically right-wing. Tonkian leans to the liberal left, and Malakian considers himself apolitical in his personal life. So writing more political music has kind of been an issue the last few years. So after 15 years of creative tension and political disagreements among its members, why break the silence? And better yet, how? The same thing that brought them together all those years ago. the persecution of Armenia. In late September 2020, Armenia found themselves under fire from neighboring country and longtime friends of Turkey, Azerbaijan, particularly in an area called Artsakh, which, according to the international community, is technically a part of Azerbaijani, but there are a lot of Armenian people who live there, and they kind of still connect with their Armenian background. System of a Down supports their independence away from Azerbaijani, calling for it to be recognized as its own republic. Yada yada yada, all this conflict in the Middle East can get kind of convoluted to us in the West. A lot of historical and cultural things all mixed up in this. Seriously, I'm just trying to relay what I found on Wikipedia. The important thing for you to know is, System of a Down, despite all the creative and political disparities, came together once again after 15 years and released Protect the Land and Genocidal Humanoids, with all of the funds of the singles and the merch drop going to the Armenia Fund. This is the shirt that they released, and when they dropped it, I was like, heck yeah, I'm buying that, come on man. I'm going to post a link to the Armenia Fund in the description box if you'd like to donate. Armenia is under attack once again, citizens being bombed and killed just a few years after the 100-year anniversary of the Armenian genocide, and according to System, another ethnic cleansing. From what I can tell, there's been a ceasefire between Armenia and Azerbaijani, which I think Armenia is not very happy about the conditions, and Azerbaijani is. According to Tonkian's own Instagram page, it seems Azerbaijani is breaking that ceasefire pretty often anyway. There's still work to do for the allies of Armenia and Artsakh. Well, now, everything I said about hope and all that just a minute ago is kind of bogus, right? Well, I don't think so. I think System of a Down's voices of urgent calls to action and awareness to the oppression of disenfranchised people, whether it's Armenia citizens, American prisoners in the abusive incarceration system, victims of the war on drugs, people calling for peace at a seemingly deaf government, will always be relevant, will always ring true, and be a source of strength, determination, inspiration, and hope for generations to come. Whatever political bullcrap the upcoming decades throws at us. Thank you for watching.